Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar. My name is Larry Alford. I'm a region manager with the Georgia Manufacturing Extension Partnership Program, and I'll be serving as the host today. And we'll start by giving you just a quick overview of who the Georgia MEP is. We're a statewide organization that helps our state's manufacturers, large and small, to be more competitive and innovative using the full resources of Georgia Tech and our partners. Our services range and address a wide variety of needs aimed at making a significant difference in our clients' results in productivity, quality, cost, safety and health, lead time, and much, much more. Annually, we deliver services to over 700 manufacturers around the state. And if we haven't had the opportunity to meet you and your management team, we'd love to have that opportunity to get to know you, what your needs are, and then discover how we can help you be even better than what your results have been. Today's webinar, we've got a few ground rules. This webinar is being recorded. All the participants are muted, but you do have the ability to interact. So please submit your questions at any time using the Q&A box, which you should find near the bottom of your screen. And we'll have a period of facilitated questions and answers at the end. And the purpose of today's event is to encourage employers to offer work-based learning opportunities to high school students and to at-risk youth in their areas. And those work-based learning opportunities can be in many forms: apprenticeships, internships, paid work experiences, part-time work, many more options. And work-based learning is proven to provide a path to help employers address their recruiting needs while developing the next generation of workforce talent. And one key aspect of planning and executing these programs is knowing and abiding by the federal and state child labor laws. These laws define when and how much a student can work, the types of environments in which they can be employed, the tasks that can and can't be performed, and the amount of oversight and supervision that's required. And in today's program, Jenny Houlroyd, Manager of Occupational Health and Services for Georgia Tech's Safety, Health, and Environmental Services Group, will provide an overview of the child labor laws, emphasizing what can be done in connecting 16 and 17-year-old students with work. She'll describe what these young workers need to learn before entering the work site and examine statistically the safety record of workers under the age of 18. And after Jenny, we'll have a case study presented by Jeremy Jones, Department Manager with Shaw Industries, describing their approach to using young workers in their enterprise, including the challenges and the benefits they're experiencing. So Jenny, it'll be on you. Everyone, please welcome Jenny Houlroyd.
Thank you, Larry, and I am looking forward to speaking with everyone today, and I am going to get started. So this is a little bit of a background. We are seeing baby boomers leaving the workforce. The Gen Xers and the older millennials are sandwiched in between, and we have millennials and the younger generations that are joining the workforce now. And what I found, well, my role at Georgia Tech, we provide free on-site compliance assistance through funding from OSHA to do outreach to companies. And I've been working with Georgia Tech with this OSHA consultation program since 2005, but we've had the OSHA consultation program for 42 years now. And the challenge we're seeing a lot of employers face now is creating a sustainable workforce. And when I mean sustainable, I mean a workforce that is able to join and find meaningful work that they can do and stay employed throughout an extended period of time. And I want to share some of the experiences that I've had in interacting with employers and interacting with parents and young workers over the years. So one of the biggest barriers we see is a lot of parents are adverse to their children being employees. And there is a perception that parents have that entering industrial construction or other industrial type settings will have a negative impact on their child's safety and health. And so One study found that 77.8% of parents had that barrier. So as employers, you do have that barrier of parents. The issue is, though, is that younger workers, and in statistical terms, they classify a younger worker as one that is 24 years or younger. So that encompasses a large range of people. And especially those that are between the ages of 18 and 24, they tend to be overrepresented in the more dangerous jobs. They're low person on the totem pole, and they are given the most dangerous tasks in those industries. And so we do see a disproportionate number of injuries related to that. What we do know is that if you're under the age of 25, you're twice as likely to end up in the emergency room compared to those who are workers that are over the age of 25. And there's a variety of factors. One of the biggest things that a lot of employers need to keep in mind is that neurologically, the brain is still developing well into the 20s. And so even though you're technically an adult, some of the same challenges that you see with teenagers, you could still see with individuals that are in their early 20s, where the pathways in their brain are still developing. And so there is a biological bent that they tend to be more risk takers because that's an evolutionary trait for survival. And so we do see naturally there is a much more likelihood that younger workers will end up in the emergency room. This is from 2013, and I wanted to use this even though it's a little outdated because in 2013 there were 350 fatalities among young workers that were 24 years and younger, and 14 of those fatalities were those workers that were 17 and younger. However, I looked up this morning the statistics for 2019, which is the most recent year that there's fully published statistics for breaking it down by age and category. And in 2019, there were 84 fatalities among those who were 19 and younger. 34 were 17 and younger. So that's twice that of that 14 fatalities. And for when you're looking at those who are under the age of 24 and younger, there were 409 fatalities. So we are heading in the wrong direction. And looking at the fatality charts between 2015 and 2019, the fatalities raised every year between 2015 and 2019. So we are definitely heading in the wrong direction. And there's some reasonings for that. One thing is that a lot of young workers aren't getting the appropriate training. And so if you are looking to hire younger workers or get them into apprenticeship programs, one of the most beneficial things you can do is provide progressive and proactive safety and health training. And so that, when done properly, safety training accounted for 12% reduction in workers' compensation claims. However, the study showed that when you looked at claims purely among those who were 24 and younger, the reduction was 42%. So this is a age population that does tremendously well with direction. So giving them training, letting them know that they can do these jobs and this is how you do it well and do it safely just requires a little bit of time and effort on the employer's part to provide the appropriate safety and health training. Some of the things I've learned over time from working with employers and working with teachers and working with young workers is that most young workers come in with very poor understanding of what their rights are. And so most young workers reported that they didn't know that they had rights. And that's something that is so critically important because if a young worker sees something that doesn't look right, when we had focus group studies with younger workers, we found that they were so fearful of being seen as being incompetent or not being sufficient enough that they didn't report these hazards and ended up putting themselves at risk for being injured because they were afraid of getting in trouble. They were afraid of being losing their job. They were afraid of how they would be perceived. So letting young workers know that they do have rights, that you want them to speak up, that you want them to come to you and say if you see anything that doesn't look right is so critically important. employers have often, and I'm sure some of you on this call today have voiced a reluctance to hire younger workers because of a variety of things, and it has to do with safety and reliability and retention and professionalism. But I think what you'll find is that you have a younger generation that is eager to learn and eager to get out there. And then with a little bit of direction and nudging, you can create a sustainable worker, a worker that can have long-term impact in the community in which you serve, that'll extend far beyond the time that you may even have with them. I have also found that with a lot of these programs, there are teachers desperate to get their kids in work-based learning opportunities. And these teachers are desperate for resources, and they appreciate when employers are looking to reach out and reinforce principles that are covered in classes, give resources back to the school and to the community. And so for employers that are out there wondering, how in the world am I going to find enough employees to do X, Y, and Z? If you know that there is a career academy in your county, the Cobb County just opened up a brand new career academy. You can contact that career academy and be connected with instructors that are desperately seeking for opportunities to get their students trained. And you never know, you might just find your next star employee among this workforce population, the student workforce population. We also find that a lot of nonprofits and organizations are tasked with reaching out and educating youth, which is part of the reason why we're having this webinar today, is really connecting all the dots and letting you know, here, this is how you can safely hire younger workers, and this is how you can reach out to teachers, and this is how you can get all connected so that all the parties are effectively communicating. And that takes a lot of champions in this area. So I am really happy to see in the chat that one of the participants has a career academy that they reach out to. That is really an awesome opportunity for employers to find fresh young employees. So why are there child labor laws? If we look back in history, child labor laws were created directly as a result of the Industrial Revolution. Our children worked in mines and factories, and they worked long hours, for 12 to 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, sometimes for kittens, very little funds. They didn't go to school because they were offered job opportunities and the families needed the money, so they worked. And they had small limbs and hands, so they could reach in and grab things out of equipment. So we often saw lots of lost limbs and killed in machinery. And so the advent of child labor laws came from a place of protecting our youth and keeping them in school. And so that is one of the biggest challenges that employers face, is making sure that the outreach you do to bringing in younger workers is really critically important in as far as getting them connected while not inhibiting their education, but instead creating a supplement to the education. There's so much you learn from working, how to interact with people, how to be responsible, how to show up on time. There's so many skill sets that are important to their education as well in the workplace. So where you can go to start is with Youth Rules. Youth Rules is the website that was created by the Department of Labor, and it is designed to protect teens, so those that are under the age of 18, from working long hours, late hours, or doing certain activities that are considered dangerous. And so we're going to go into some of those activities, but really I would love to speak with individuals on a one-on-one basis to really tease out what specific activities at your facility would be most appropriate or most inappropriate for that teen worker. The nice thing about the Youth Rules website, as opposed to the regular Department of Labor youth labor website, is it's divided by teachers, teens, parents, and employers. So you can click on the employer link and you're able to find out more information from there. And while the rest of the presentation is going on, I'm going to put these links into the chat. the first thing you need to look at when it's how do you get a young worker to work is that there are certain rules when it comes to the ages that employees can work, at what age and what hours they can work. And once you get to 16 and 17, so if you're looking at hiring a 16 or 17-year-old, there's no limits on times and hours. When you get below that, there are limits on times and hours. And I just wanted to clarify that there's federal rules and then there are state rules. And in the state of Georgia, this is the Georgia work hour restrictions, and it only applies to minors under the age of 16. And so just to keep in mind when you're looking at hiring a younger worker, if you're looking at 16 or 17-year-olds, there's no restriction. It's just when you have 15 and 14-year-olds. There are things called hazardous orders, and these will be your best friends in understanding what kids can and can't do when they're on the job. And they're broken down into a variety of different areas. There's manufacturing, driving of motor vehicles, coal mining, logging, power-driven working vehicles, exposure to radioactive substances, power-driven hoisting, power-driven metal forming, mining, meat processing, power-driven bakery machines. And the number 12 is power-driven paper products, scrap paper. Then you have manufacturing of brick, power-driven circular saws, wrecking, roofing, trenching. All of these have areas that are particularly hazardous, but there's some that apply to more industries than others. Most of y'all probably aren't under the category of radiological materials, but maybe you have a situation where you want somebody to be driving or outside helper on motor vehicles. And that is clearly written that generally it prohibits youth from driving motor vehicles on public roads, but certain 17-year-olds may perform driving that is occasional and incidental. So this is really giving you a concept of, I could have this person help out, but I don't want them to be doing deliveries. And so when you're trying to figure out what jobs they can and cannot do, these hazardous orders help check off certain items. The next is power-driven hoisting apparatuses. And this is so critically important because this is where a lot of the fatalities have occurred in the past and where we want to make sure that your younger workers are not operating them. Bans on operation of most power-driven hoisting apparatus and elevators, bobcats, cranes, lift trucks, and including forklifts. The Department of Labor makes these stickers that say you must be 18 to operate or clean this equipment. These are great. You can apply them to the pieces of equipment that students can and can't be working on. And it's a nice way to say you can work out here, but you can't operate this machine. This includes for certain power-driven metalworking machines. And with this one, there are some exemptions if you are in certain types of apprenticeship programs. And that's where some of the caveats to this come into play, where we can sit down and have a discussion like, what is this that you want the students to be doing? How do you want them to be engaged in this, the younger workers? And how can we find a mechanism that they can do it where they're trained appropriately to handle the operation? And is it appropriate? One thing, young workers are not allowed to handle any power-driven paper product machines, scrap balers, or paper box compactors. One of the most atrocious things that I had to deal with earlier on in my career was a 17-year-old being crushed in a baler. And horrific scene. But these are the items that you may have in the back of your facility that you don't think much about. And you have to make sure that you train the younger workers that you bring on, that they're not allowed to use them. They're not allowed to operate them, but also train all the other employees that they can't ask that younger worker to go and use it and operate it. There's also a variety of bandsaws and circular saws. And this is another one that has exemptions for student learners or apprentices. So be aware that some of these types of machinery that are not allowed to be used do have exemptions if you get enrolled in certain programs. As far as what this means, one of the most important elements is direct supervision. When we did research on younger workers, we found that most of the injuries occurred between months 3 and 6 on the job. And that was because when they first started, there was better supervision. They were just getting started. People were watching what they were doing. And then suddenly, because in our adult brains, we believe that after 90 days, you should be able to function efficiently, we stopped that intense supervision. And at that point, younger workers developing brains still need that supervision. And so we really want to emphasize the importance of having somebody that is physically present within an immediate distance. That's what we mean by direct supervision. And that's not only important because the research shows it's important, but it's also important from a legal standpoint that there are certain degrees tasks that employees might be able to do or be doing that do require that direct supervision. When you see in child labor terms the term occasional or incidental, just be aware that that means no more than 1/3 of any given time or 20% of their work week. So be aware when you're looking at giving them different tasks, if it says incidental, keep it under that 20% threshold. And then operation means you are setting it up, adjusting, repairing, oiling, or cleaning the equipment. So be aware that just because they aren't physically doing something with the tool in that operational mode that we're typically considered, the process of setting up and cleaning up afterward is still considered part of that operation. Some of the other items that I strongly encourage employers that are looking at getting more information about child labor and enrolling younger workers into their workforce is making sure that when you bring in these younger workers that you educate all employees about the apprentices or younger workers and the rules, because you don't want somebody who is a mid-level manager or a frontline manager being unaware of child labor laws, asking a younger worker to do something, and then that younger worker ending up getting injured and then the entire corporation being held liable. So it helps to train all the workers about bringing on this new subpopulation of your workforce. I often recommend, especially if you are able to do it in a way that's really positive in nature, of creating a distinctive attire for the apprentices or the younger workers. This helps the other employees identify them and be situationally aware if they are operating machinery or equipment that they're not supposed to be operating. It also allows individuals to know that that person on the floor needs a little bit more supervision, a little more guidance. We also recommend either color coding or labeling equipment that should not be operated by the apprentices. When I have worked with organizations that have brought in child labor and they have had the Department of Labor walk through their facility, they are looking for identification and separation of the younger worker from being able to, in any way, shape, or form, operating the equipment that they're not supposed to work. And where I really encourage you to start as far as looking up more information is going to that Department of Labor website and looking at the youth rules that are specific for employers. But we also have our OSHA consultation program. And so if you go to oshainfo.gatech.edu, I will put it in the chat window so that you're able to click on the link. We can come out and provide free on-site consultation service that looks at safety and health at your job site. And if you put that you're looking at younger workers, we can make sure that we send somebody that is trained to really meet with you and discuss with you which tasks would be best suited for bringing on this younger worker population. So that is a very quick overview of child labor. And some of the things that you need to be considering. But I think what you're going to find the most important information is from really listening to experiences of groups that have done that. And we're very excited that we have on hand Jeremy Jones, who is going to be going through and giving you guidance on his experience with hiring younger workers. So I am going to make Jeremy the presenter and turn it on over to you. So next we have Jeremy, who's going to share his experience at Shaw Industries.
Thank you, Jenny. I'm Jeremy Jones. I'm a department manager with Shaw Industries. I've been with the company about 20 years, and I've been working with the GPP, or the Great Promise Partnership, for about the last 6 years to bring in students that are sort of at risk to work with us here at Shaw Industries. And the reason we work with the GPP is to sort of have a partnership to improve our communities. We're taking the students that may be struggling in school and they're thinking about maybe dropping out because they need to start making money to maybe help support their families or help support themselves. So we work with the schools, and our goal is to keep the students engaged in school. We want them to be able to graduate high school and then become very good workers in our community. It teaches young adults what it's like to have a job, and it helps provide Shaw Industries with future employees. So the onboarding process when we do this is we work with our local high schools in the area, and we talk to the counselors and let them know that we have 4 or 5 openings that we want to try to fill with some part-time labor through the GPP program. So the counselors will get us a list of students. The students then will have to create a resume. The first time many of these students have even thought about creating a resume. So they will create their resumes, they will send them in to us, we will look over them. And then we will go to the schools and interview the students. And I've did this several times with students, and I will let you know that 90% of the students, when you go in to do the interviews, they are very nervous. And you really have to almost pull information out from them. But once you start to get to know those students and get to talk to them, you can sort of see that, yes, I think this would be a good fit for your corporation. So once we get done doing the interviews, we talk to the counselors again up at the schools and say, hey, this is who we're thinking about. Can we talk to some of their teachers? We will actually talk to some of the teachers, see what they're struggling with. Maybe it's attendance, maybe it's one of their classes, and we're going to try to figure out how we can help them with that while they're working with us. So then we'll have the students come to our plant, and they must bring their parent or guardian, whether they're 18, 17, or 16. They have to bring a parent or guardian with them. And what we're going to do, we're going to sit down with them, and we're going to go through some paperwork. The Great Promise Partnership is going to have paperwork that they have to fill out. And they're going to let them know that the way you keep this job is that you have to go to class. If you do not go to class, you cannot come to work that day. Most of our students are working 3 or 4 hours a day during the school year. And if they're doing a good job at the end of the school year, they may be able to work with us during the summer. And what we allow is up to 30 hours a week during the summer. We still want them to have a day and a half off. We don't want them to be in here working 48, 60 hours, even though we could at 17 and 18, but we don't do that. So during this meeting at the plant, we really talk to that parent and guardian. We want them to know that our goal is to get their child through high school while being able to make some money for themselves and maybe for the family, and make sure they are safe. So we lay out those responsibilities. Some of those responsibilities is they have to, if they're not going to be at work that day, they have to call in just like any of our other workers. And they may go on a point system. If they miss too many days, we may have to sit down with them and talk to them about that. So they're starting to learn some responsibilities. Our responsibilities is as a management staff, we go through background checks to make sure there's nothing in anyone's past that we should not be working with any of the youth. We want to make sure that when that student comes in the door, we have someone up front and they walk them back to their work area. The students know that they're not able to leave their work area unless one of our designated trainers are with them, okay? So that's just one thing we do during the onboarding process. We walk the parents out to those work areas, show them what their students will be doing, what their children will be doing. We show them the PPE that they will be using. And we have certain designated jobs that we allow the GPP students to do. As Jenny mentioned earlier, we do not let them go run a lot of our equipment. We have them in rework areas or unloading areas where they're working in creels or loading packages onto a creel. The only real equipment they may have is scissors, markers. They also may have an electric pallet jack that we will go through extensive training with them where they may move a pallet of our carpet tiles here and there, but they would be moving at 3 to 4 feet. So, but they're also supervised during that process. So once they get hired on, their first day is going to be a day of training. They're going to be up in a classroom and going through all of our training, all of our PPE that they're required to do. And we're going to make sure that they understand that they are now in a work environment in a manufacturing facility and accidents do happen. So we've got to make sure that they understand what they're doing now. They've got to pay a little more attention to what they do when they're besides being at home or in a classroom. And then probably one of the most important people is our lead that's going to be working with our associates. They work with them day in and day out. This lead is not someone that we just chose at random to work with the associates. We go out and talk to our workforce when we're bringing in GPP students and ask who wants to work with students that could be your coworker in the future. And we have people volunteer. They go through the background checks just like the managers do that are going to be working with the students. And they go up front every morning, meet the students, bring them back to the work area, and they work no farther than 10 to 15 feet away from those students while they are there that day working. Okay, so we want to make sure, I tell the parents every time they come in that your child is going to come in here with 10 toes and 10 fingers, and they're leaving with 10 toes and 10 fingers every day. Okay, the next person is our team manager. That's going to be the student's direct report. They have to call in. If they're not going to be able to come into school or come into work that day, they have to call the team manager. The team manager also will be in touch with the school system during this process, and we will be asking, how are their grades? Have they been attending class? Because if they're not attending class, they can't come to work. If their grades are slipping, we will have to have discussions with them about you've got to be able to make and pass grades to be able to work, because we want this to be a partnership between us and the school system. The team manager will talk to them. And then also once every week or every 2 weeks, we have mentors. Now, these are some of our managers that do not manage these students out on the floor, but it's someone that they can bring in to their office, sit down and talk and get to know the students, and let that student have someone, an adult, a sounding board to throw out questions. The mentors will always be talking about how is your classes going, but then they'll be asking how stuff at home, how is stuff at school, how are you getting along with your teachers? And over time, this will become a very good friendship where these students are able to talk and share things and ask these mentors or adults things that they may not be able to ask a parent or someone else. Okay. Our mentors also go through mentor training with the GPP to make sure that they are following all the guidelines there. So we're bringing these students in. It's the first time they've ever worked somewhere. And like it or not, they're teenagers. It's their first job. There's going to be some issues here and there. Sometimes we have schedule conflicts. We had a student that worked with us during his junior year, but because of the classes he needed to take his senior year, he couldn't work with us. So he's not working with us now. But we have already been in contact, and we're hoping that his last semester in his senior year, he will be able to come back. And unfortunately, like everyone's hires, especially it seems nowadays, not everyone's going to work out and make a great fit through the program. We've had some that have come in and worked and did a really great job and started to grow and be successful, but then they decided, you know what, it's time for me to be able to help support my family. I'm dropping out of school and getting a full-time job. So unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't always work out, but we've had a lot more of the students come through and make it through our program than we've had drop out. Some of the rewards, seeing students grow and be successful. As I mentioned earlier, when we go to do interviews, we have to pull information from these students. 2 to 3 months after a lot of these students are with us, you can see them coming down the hallway saying, "Hey, Jeremy, how are you doing?" And you can see them interacting. You can talk to their teachers at the school and say, "Hey, if it wasn't for Shaw and y'all working with them, this student would have dropped out last year." And then also it's giving them tangible work experience for their future, whether that's with Shaw or with someone else. It's giving them experiences, and it's giving talent pool for us and others in our community. And that's the reason we have started doing that with Shaw, pulling in the 16, 17, 18-year-olds, because it is hard to hire in manufacturing. It's getting harder every day. And if we can start building some of that bench, whether it's a small amount, yes, I mean, I think we've hired 3 full-time students since they've graduated. We've only been doing it here at Plant T1 in Adairsville for 4 years, but we've hired 3 of those students into Shaw Industries. So if you have the opportunity to be able to do that, I think it's a great idea. You do have to put a little bit of work into it to begin with, but I think the rewards definitely outweigh those challenges. And with that, I will turn it back over to Larry.
All right. Well, thank you, Jeremy and Jenny, for your presentations. And so we'll move into a time of Q&A. And please, if you have some questions that you'd like to pose to both of them, just enter them in that Q&A box, and I'll see them and we'll direct them to both. And we have a couple of questions right away. First one for Jeremy. Our corporate HR claims that workman's comp carriers will not offer coverage to those under 18. Did Shaw have any of these problems? And if so, how did you overcome them?
It was through the GPP. We were set up through our corporate office. I'm not exactly sure there, but they have told us that we are covered if they are in our building. So I'm not sure what the insurance there is with that, but I know that our group has been able to override that.
And Jenny, one for you is kind of a long question, so I'm going to summarize it. Workman's comp, or not, got the wrong thought in my head here. Child safety labor laws can be, or seem to offer a lot of vagueness at times. And so you offered help to go in and actually see operations and help give interpretations. When it's fuzzy, how can you overcome that? Get a clear answer as to what is and isn't allowable.
That's a great question. One of the benefits of working with our OSHA consultation program or reaching out to a third party like us or other services is I can call up Department of Labor and ask, and I can send them an email and say, hey, in this scenario, how would you interpret this? And I can seek out additional guidance without you having to go directly to Wage and Hour and ask those questions. We can also, sometimes when there's areas that are sort of vague, sometimes we can talk out better options for the younger workers. So instead of trying to find a workaround with something that you may be not quite so sure it's an appropriate fit for a younger worker, I think finding jobs that would, without a doubt, would comply with the child labor law rules, and you'd be really comfortable and confident that they'd have a positive working experience is another way to approach it. So I think some of it has to do with the employers being willing to be more flexible in the job tasks that they would offer. And, I think Jeremy provides such great guidance on how much they realize that we're not just creating workers for necessarily your own company, but you're creating successful human beings for society, right? Like when you hire a younger kid, you're trying to make that experience so positive that when they go to their next job, they're going to be successful. And so I think sometimes when you try to force a younger worker to do an adult task, it's better to find a task that would be more appropriate for their age range instead, if that makes any sense. And I'd love, for specific examples to kind of really work through that if needed.
Thank you. And we have another question, Jenny, for you. Does the school or OSHA decide which jobs can be exempt through the apprentice programs?
So I think both you and I, Larry, can speak to this because we have both had experience working with the OSHA, working with the German apprenticeship program that is in Coweta County. That process of working with the exemptions is a very robust process. So if you are looking for an exemption, I recommend you being ready to be all in when it comes to hiring younger workers, and be willing to have a very open mind about the process because it is not a quick process. That said, OSHA is very concerned about protecting young workers because of the high injury rates among that worker population. And so OSHA, though, does not have child labor laws. They have an emphasis area to be super protective for younger workers, but it is not OSHA that regulates young workers. It is the Department of Labor in Wage and Hour that does. So OSHA does not have any flexibility or say about those rules. It would be specifically wage and hour. Do you want to add anything? Because I think you participated in a lot more of the wage and hour interactions.
Yeah, the thing I would just stress is that apprenticeship is primarily for students to learn. And so it's important to recognize that as apprentices, they're not operating equipment specifically for production. There may be an element of that, but the laws restrict the amount of time, the amount of continuous exposure that they can have. And so you really have to look at the apprenticeship for what it is intended to be, is you're developing a worker and exposing them to operations only as it's required for them to learn. And that's a big difference. Another question, we've had employees claim that the companies they use for background checks won't allow students under the age of 18. They also claim it is illegal for students to fill out an I-9 form for employment. Do you have any feedback on that, Jeremy?
I do not. We have not had any issues doing our background checks. Not sure about the I-9 form, but we haven't had any issues like that at our plant that I know of.
And I'm not aware of that either from my end. Jeremy, how do you define an at-risk student? I know attendance and being on track to graduate are a requirement for work-based learning, but what if they have a behavioral problem? Will you consider them as a GPP student?
Yes, we work with the counselors, really. They have the pool. I mean, they have the experience with the students. And they're the ones that normally are saying, hey, I've got a new student. I want y'all to interview if you have any openings. So we're really relying on those counselors at the schools to provide people that are what they consider at risk. And when I'm saying at risk, most of the time it is, are they going to graduate, or are they needing to drop out of school to start making money to help support themselves, their families? That's really sort of the at risk that we have been working with. But anybody that the counselor, since we've been doing this with them for 4 years now, we have a very good relationship with our local high school. And if they suggest someone, we're definitely going to consider that person. If they did have some other type at risk, we would discuss that and go through that, but I don't see that being an obstacle.
And so what is the first step to get these candidates, Jeremy? How did you get started when it was?
Well, through the GPP, the Great Promise Partnership there. We were contacted by them. Shaw was asked if we would be interested in enrolling in this. They came down and spoke to us. And then we started getting with the local school systems in Bartow County here. So there's 3 or 4 manufacturing Shaw facilities here in Bartow County. And we have worked with Adairsville High School, Cartersville High School, and Woodland High School. So 3 of the local high schools and 3 of the plants have worked together and are continuing to work together to do this. And like I said, reach out to your high schools and also reach out to the GPP partnership. Go online, look them up, reach out to them. I work with Janet McQueen through GPP, and she's always willing to reach out. If it's not in her area, she'll get you in touch with someone through GPP that can help get that started for you.
And I'll give you a hint that after the meeting is over, we're going to give everybody some links to resources. So not just the GPP, but every work-based learning coordinator, all the high schools, all the college and career academies, we're going to give you links and resources where you can look them up in your area, reach out and find out what's available. What can you get started with? And what programs and pathways do they offer? It's a great way to get started on your journey. And Jeremy, we've got a couple other questions I'll combine to. Number one, how many students do you employ currently, and what do you pay them?
Currently, we have 4 students, and we are actually next week, we're going up to the school to interview several more candidates. The most we've ever had here at the plant has been 6 at one point. Normally, we stay at 3 or 4, but we've got 2 students that we know that are going to be graduating soon. So we're trying to already go ahead and look ahead and plan who is going to backfill those slots. We don't want to get too many students because we do sort of try to make sure that we keep a very good eye on them and sort of keep a good pulse of how stuff's going with them. So we don't want to get too large, but they work in an area that if we didn't have the students here, we'd probably have to run some overtime. But with them coming in and working, we're able to do that. And I think right now they're a little bit less than $13 an hour for our students right now. So it's a good pay for a part-time. And our students during the school year, they're getting about a 15 to 18-hour paycheck. And then during the summer, if they're able to work, they can get up to 30 hours.
Awesome. All right, that's the end of the questions for the moment. Maybe we'll go to the next slide, and if somebody has another question they want to slip in at the end, we can. But we have a poll that we want to launch because we do want a little bit of feedback, the type of organization that you represent.
Hey, Larry?
Yes.
I do see one more question. I don't know if you were able to see this set. Do you see a risk in employing a 16-year-old who is no longer enrolled in school and looking for permanent work? And if they are not operating a machine, but would be pulling fabric near a machine? Did you see that question?
No, but yeah, that please.
So what I would recommend is that is a very complex question. And I think from a broader perspective, when we look at getting younger workers meaningful experience when they're teenagers, it is really supposed to be a supplement to their education. And I would strongly encourage reaching out to programs like GPP to see if they could convince that person to get back into school and make a meaningful, because what you want is a sustainable worker, and a sustainable worker is much more likely to be a long-term worker if they have a high school diploma. And I would strongly encourage looking for ways to encourage that person, that teenager, to find a way to get back into school to continue. That is my personal opinion in that matter. Technically, I would have to look at the actual machinery to determine whether or not you're violating any child labor laws related to hazardous orders. And I think that would definitely be in the realm of a gray area, given the machinery in the area. And I think there might be challenges to a 16-year-old working in that type of environment. That said, I think having a broader conversation on the side, contacting either myself or maybe Jeremy, if he would be willing to speak with you about it. I think finding a way to make these young kids have successful lives is probably should be the overarching goal. Did you want to add anything, Jeremy?
No, I agree with that. You know, one of the things that we do here at Shaw is that you have to be a student for to be employed here if you have not reached 18 years old. So if a student starts with us and then decides to drop out, they will not be employed with us any longer. Because that is our goal, is to get that student through high school with their diploma and then being able to go out and seek jobs. And that's our goal, is to try to, as you said, make better citizens, make better people in our community. And that's our goal, is to try to get them through high school.
Jeremy, I did find one other question. Do you place your students on the payroll, or are they like a third party involved in some fashion?
They are on our payroll as a part-time. And we have some part-time associates, and they are considered a part-time associate. Even in the summer when they're working, you know, a couple more hours, but they are considered part-time. They go through all of our safety training that our hourly associates go through every month. So if this month's safe training is lift truck or lockout tagout, even though they may not be doing those things, we want them to know about it. So they're going through all of that safe training every month, just like our hourly associates would be.
That's great. Jenny, do you see any other questions on your end?
Larry, I'm sorry, Jenny. Larry, I sent you a question. I don't know if you saw it, and you probably have already answered it. It said, we've had employees claim companies they use for background checks won't allow students under the age of 18. They also claim it is illegal for students to fill out an I-9 form. Any feedback on that?
I think Jeremy mentioned it earlier that he didn't have any issues with that, but I want to talk about a broader perspective when companies say that they don't deal with things or things are illegal for under certain ages. A lot of times that is a liability concern. And that is why working with programs like the Great Promise Partnership, using OSHA consultation and showing how you're proactively making your job site safer and healthier can really show that you're creating an environment that is conducive to having younger workers present, because what the companies that are saying they don't work with teens are thinking is they're thinking of those pictures I shared of child labor law, like a kid working in a mill back in the 1800s getting their arm amputated. They're not thinking about these amazing learning opportunities that kids are being offered today. So I think there has to be a broader conversation where you don't just say, hey, do you guys do this? But say, this is what we plan on doing. How are you going to help us reach this goal? It's really framing the conversation.
Awesome. Jeremy, any last word then?
No, thank y'all for listening.
Yes, and thank you both, Jenny and Jeremy, for your presentations today. And we hope this has been an encouragement for everyone to push for more of these kind of opportunities to be made available to our students. So Aisha, if you'd go ahead and launch the poll. We just have a really short 3-question poll that we'd like everyone to take part in, just to describe your employer, what type of business organization you're part of. Do you currently offer work-based learning activities, and was this program helpful in maybe helping that be more possible? So if you'd go ahead and complete that, you've got 3 minutes to do that. And Aisha, if you'd advance to the next slide, and maybe, so you might have given me that privilege back. Yes, immediately after the survey, we're going to be sending you some information. We're going to send you a big list of links and contacts where you can explore the work-based learning programs and the folks who can help you get connected in your area. And so if you have trouble finding the right person, we've also given you a link to all of the region managers from the MEP. So feel free to reach out to me or the others. We'll help you get to the right folks. And in November, we haven't quite settled on the date yet, maybe the 4th, maybe the 9th. We're going to do another event, and we're going to take a deeper dive into some of the work-based learning programs like what Jeremy has described at Shaw. We're going to try to give you a better understanding of the range of programs that can be supported with the younger workers. So look for that. You'll be getting invitations in that very shortly. And again, we thank you for your time and for all of the effort it takes to continue to work and to be in business during this pandemic. I know we're all hopeful that soon we'll be on the other side, whatever the new normal is. But thank you for your interest in reaching out to the students and providing more opportunity for them to get engaged in work. So thank you again to Jeremy and Jenny. We'll be dismissed. I hope you have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much. And thank you to Jeremy. Appreciate his
Thank y'all.
experience.
Enjoyed it.